song, this is my story based on this song. It didn't make sense at all. And yet I knew, and I didn't know how I knew, but I absolutely knew. He walked into the theater, and I'm pretty sure I heard a gasp, and it might have come from me. It was the Zeitgeist Theater Company, where we met once a week, this group of writers and actors and degrees of talent in Santa Monica to work our craft. It was B-list actors like Lucy Lee Flippin, who played Armanzo's sister on Little House on the Prairie. Yeah, she was famous. And Fred Willard, who had been on WKRP in Cincinnati. He was like the big headliner in our theater company. And then the rest was a bunch of unknowns and no names and wannabes like me. We were creative orphans seeking family and community, working on our auditions and writing plays and pieces for each other. We were the land of the misfit toys and character actors. So when he stepped in and stood in the entranceway, it seemed like the whole world stood still. His beauty was unnerving, like he had his own special lighting. And personally, I felt scrambled, not just because of his looks, which were mind-boggling, but because of something else, something that I couldn't put words to. It was this incredibly odd feeling, like something had gone radically wrong in my life, like I had taken somewhere a really bad turn, like there was some sort of wrinkle in time. Because when I saw him, I was so sure in that split moment, in a way that I have never been sure about anything else in my entire life, that I was supposed to be with this man. Which is why my mind was so scrambled, because, you see, I was also, at this very same moment, married to someone else. So I stared at him really uncomfortably and confused until I began to rationalize this experience, which was easy to do because the more I stared at this Adonis standing in the doorway, the more I realized, no, of course, no, right, of course. I bet every woman thinks they're supposed to marry him. This man was Will Schaub. And he looked like God had just taken extra time, you know? Like, he looked like God was kind of showing off, you know? And so, when you come across the path of one of God's finest artworks, you know, it's pretty cool to bear witness to such beauty. I mean, if you're into that kind of thing. Which honestly, I wasn't. You know, I wasn't at all. I was all about borderline ugly guys. Honestly, I was. Because borderline ugly men were usually really funny. And humor is, I think, the world's greatest form of foreplay. Right? And borderline ugly men are usually really smart, which is, to me, another fine aphrodisiac. And borderline ugly men are notoriously good in bed. So, there's that. Do not underestimate borderline ugly men. So Will Schaub, as beautiful as he was not my type, way too good looking, and plus, as I mentioned, I was married. So I gently wrapped up this very unsettling moment of clarity and did my best to ignore it and just forget about it. And then one day, Will and I were cast in a play. It was this odd little one act where these two people met and had this conversation about car parts that slowly slid into sexual innuendos until at the very end of the play, I was basically straddling him on stage, screaming something about drive shaft and clean my muffler. It was real highbrow stuff. But it turned out that Will and I had really good chemistry. And I remember after that first mounting of that production in our theater group, I found my way back to my chair and I was head to toe red. It was like a full-on sexual sunburn. And if you know me, it takes a lot to make this girl blush. And then Will, this very good-looking guy from our theater company, got diagnosed with cancer. And that news spread like wildfire. because we actors love our dramas. Cancer? Will? That guy, the good-looking one? He's like 24 from our theater company? He has cancer? He has stage 3 cancer. None of us felt able to digest the news because he was so young and healthy looking. And I called him and I left a message on his phone that went something like, "I'm so sorry, and I heard that you have, and I think it's gonna be fine. It's okay, I'll talk to you later." I should have rehearsed. And then we watched, our theater company, watched this very sad production as Will, our handsome leading man, began to come undone. Just like the Velveteen Rabbit, he got real. He got really real. And his hair fell out, and he got bloated from chemo, and his happy disposition turned gray. And we leaned in and we held our breath as we watched this horrible scene that went unscripted by anyone there. And we loved him even more. We theater misfits, we loved him even more because now he was like us, kind of ugly. And then my husband left me, and I fell into my own shitstorm. And the theater became my poor man's therapy, where I would perform horrific, heartbreaking monologues and terribly tragic love songs that I would write myself and perform a cappella. "Tonight I will dress up in a smile, and over all my love it will shine through. This is not the last time that my eyes will cry, I know, but it's the last time that my heart breaks over you." Thank you. Not my best work, but extremely cathartic. We were allowed to comment on each other's works, and Will would raise his feeble hand and he would tell me that I was brave for sharing my story. And I would stare back at his beautiful bald head and I would think, "Brother, you're the brave one." I was so devastated by that breakup of my marriage that I swore off dating forever, and then I settled into a 12-month sabbatical. And I moved my son into a back house, and Will and I, one girl and one boy, both went through our own personal earthquakes on separate sides of the city of Santa Monica. And Will got better, and then it got worse, and then he got better, and then it got worse, and I got better, and then I got worse, and then I got better, and then I got worse, and slowly we began to both emerge from the wreckage. And my knees were shaky and my faith was unsure, and he came over my house one day and he asked me on a date, and of course I said, "No." Good-looking guys are not to be trusted. If I go back at all, it's with borderline ugly. And then he asked me again, and I said no. And then he asked me again, and again, and again, and again. And then he made me a mixtape of songs. Yeah, right? That's it, right? With a picture of him on the cover, with a thought bubble coming out of his head that said, "Sleepless in Santa Monica." And then I said yes, because he put so much work into this piece of art.
Wore you down.
And he opened the door for me, and he stared at me like I was made of stardust, and he told me I was beautiful, and I would smack him and tell him, "Cut it out, we don't go for that kind of shit." But little by little, he restored my faith. And it's been 21 years and 4 kids and many moves, and I've loved him. And I've fallen out of love with him, and I've fallen back in love with him. And every once in a while, I see him again, like that first time standing in the entranceway when he took my breath away. And it didn't make any sense, but I knew, and I still do.